First contact, the arrival. The sleek, silver spacecraft plummeted through Earth's atmosphere, leaving a fiery trail in its wake. Inside, Zara, the Galactic Union's most decorated scout, fought with the controls, her four-fingered hands dancing across the flickering holographic interface. Warning klaxons blared as the ship's AI announced imminent system failures. Krax's teeth. Zora cursed, using an oath from her homeworld. She had underestimated the primitive defenses of this backwater planet. A simple scan had triggered some sort of electromagnetic pulse, frying her ship's delicate systems. Now, instead of gathering intel on the supposedly pre-spaceflight civilization below, she was about to become an unwilling immigrant. The ground rushed up to meet her. Zara braced for impact, her iridescent scales shimmering with stress-induced bioluminescence. The ship smashed through a copse of trees before skidding to a halt in a meadow, leaving a long furrow of scorched earth behind it. For a long moment, all was silent. Then, with a hiss of escaping gas, the ship's canopy cracked open. Zara crawled out, her life body aching from the crash. She stood on shaky legs, taking in her surroundings with large, multifaceted eyes that glowed softly in the twilight. The air was thick and humid, heavy with the scent of vegetation and earth. Zara's respiratory slits flared as she adjusted to the oxygen-rich atmosphere. In the distance, she could hear the calls of unfamiliar creatures and the rustle of wind through leaves. Well, she muttered to herself, this is less than ideal. A snapping twig made her whirl around, her hand instinctively reaching for the stun rod at her hip. From the tree line emerged a figure Zara recognized from her briefings, a human. He was tall and muscular, with skin the color of the earth and eyes that reminded Zara of the sky just before a storm. The human wore simple clothing made of some kind of plant fiber, and in his hand he held a primitive projectile weapon. A gun, if Zara remembered correctly. For a long moment, they stared at each other, neither moving. Zara's mind raced. Her translator implant should allow her to understand and speak the local language. But would the human attack before she could explain herself? To her surprise, it was the human who broke the silence. Well, he said, his deep voice tinged with what Zora's implant identified as wry amusement. I've seen some strange things in these woods, but you take the cake. Zara blinked her inner eyelids in confusion. I have not taken any cake, she replied hesitantly. The human's mouth quirked up at one corner. It's an expression. Means you're the strangest thing I've ever seen. He lowered his weapon slightly, though he didn't put it away. You got a name, Space Lady. I am Scout Commander Zora of the Galactic Union, she said, drawing herself up to her full height, which, she noted with some chagrin, still left her a head shorter than the human. And you are? Jack, the human replied simply. Jack Hawthorne, former Army Ranger, current hermit. He gestured at the smoking wreck of Zora's ship. Looks like you had yourself quite a landing there. Zara felt a flash of irritation. It was not supposed to be a landing at all. Your planet's defenses disabled my ship. Jack's eyebrows rose. Our defenses. Lady, I hate to break it to you, but if we had anything capable of taking down a spaceship, I wouldn't be living in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. Before Zora could respond, a distant rumbling sound caught her attention. Her antennae twitched, picking up electromagnetic signatures that set her nerves on edge. We need to leave, she said urgently. Now. Jack frowned, cocking his head to listen. His eyes widened slightly. Military choppers, he muttered. Yeah, I think you're right. He seemed to come to a decision, lowering his gun completely. Come on. My place isn't far. We can lay low there until we figure out what's what. Zara hesitated. Every instinct told her not to trust this primitive alien, to find a way to contact her people and get off this backwater planet as quickly as possible. But the approaching aircraft left her with little choice. Very well, she said. Lead the way, Jack Hawthorne. As they slipped into the cover of the forest, Zara couldn't help but wonder what she had gotten herself into. This was supposed to be a simple reconnaissance mission. Now she was crashed on an alien world, relying on the mercy of a species known throughout the galaxy for their unpredictability and capacity for violence. Jack moved through the forest with a quiet grace that belied his size. Zara found herself having to work to keep up, her own movements feeling clumsy in the unfamiliar terrain. "So," Jack said as they ducked under a low-hanging branch, "what brings a nice alien girl like you to our neck of the woods?" Zara bristled at the nice alien girl comment, but decided to let it slide. "I was sent to observe your planet, to determine if your species was ready for first contact." Jack chuckled, a sound that Zara found both irritating and oddly pleasant. "Well, I'd say you've made first contact now, wouldn't you? Though I'm not sure I'm the best representative of humanity." "And why is that?" Zara asked, curious despite herself. Jack's face darkened for a moment. "Let's just say I've seen the worst humanity has to offer. It's why I'm out here, away from it all." Before Zara could press further, they emerged into a small clearing. A rustic wooden structure stood before them, surrounded by a well-tended garden. "Home sweet home," Jack announced, leading her towards the cabin. "It's not much, but it's off the grid and should keep you hidden for a while." As they approached the door, Zara heard the choppers growing closer. Jack ushered her inside quickly, closing and bolting the door behind them. The interior of the cabin was simple but cozy. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, while shelves lined with books covered another. A small kitchen area occupied one corner, and Zara could see a ladder leading up to a loft space. "Make yourself comfortable," Jack said, moving to peek out a window. "Looks like we made it just in time." The sound of helicopters grew to a crescendo, then began to fade as they passed overhead. Zara let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "They'll be searching the crash site," Jack mused, "but they shouldn't find us here. At least not right away." Zara sank onto a worn but comfortable-looking chair, suddenly feeling the full weight of her ordeal. "I thank you," she said, the words feeling strange in her mouth, "for helping me." Jack turned to look at her, his storm-gray eyes unreadable. "Don't thank me yet, Space Lady. We've still got to figure out how to get you home, and how to do it without starting an interstellar incident." As the sound of the helicopters faded into the distance, Zara realized that her simple mission had become something far more complex. She was stranded on an alien world, relying on the help of a human who seemed to embody both the compassion and the danger she'd been warned about. One thing was certain, nothing in her training had prepared her for this. Uneasy alliance. Survival in the wilderness. The first rays of Earth's sun filtered through the cabin windows, casting a warm glow over the interior. Zara stirred from her fitful sleep, her multifaceted eyes adjusting quickly to the light. For a moment, she was disoriented, the unfamiliar scents and sounds of the forest assaulting her senses. Then it all came rushing back. The crash, the human named Jack, the hiding. She sat up on the makeshift bed Jack had prepared for her on the cabin's small couch, her scales shimmering with a mix of anxiety and curiosity. "Morning, Space Lady," Jack's gruff voice came from the kitchen area. "Hope you like eggs, because that's about all I've got that might be edible for you." Zara approached cautiously, watching as Jack cracked oval objects into a metal pan. The sizzling sound and aroma made her stomach churn in an unfamiliar way. "I am uncertain if my digestive system can process your food," she admitted. Jack shrugged. "Only one way to find out. Unless you've got some space rations hidden in that suit of yours." Zara shook her head. Her emergency supplies had been destroyed in the crash. She watched as Jack skillfully flipped the eggs, noting the efficiency of his movements. Despite his isolated lifestyle, it was clear he had not lost the training of a soldier. "So," Jack said as he slid the eggs onto a plate, "what's the plan? I'm guessing you've got some way to contact your people." Zara's antennae drooped slightly. "My communication device was damaged in the crash. I would need to repair it, but," She hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. But you need parts that probably don't exist on this primitive planet of ours. Jack finished for her, a hint of amusement in his voice. Precisely, Zara admitted. And even if I could repair it, using it might alert your authorities to my presence. Jack nodded, taking a bite of his eggs. Yeah, I'd bet good money that your crash site is crawling with military and alphabet agencies by now. They'll be looking for you. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. What would they do if they found me? Jack's expression turned grim. Best case, they'd study you, try to learn about your technology. Worst case, he shook his head. Let's just say it wouldn't be pleasant. Zara's bioluminescence flickered with fear. Then what can we do? Jack was silent for a long moment, chewing thoughtfully. We've got two options, he finally said. One, we try to keep you hidden here until we can figure out a way to contact your people safely. Two, we make a run for it. Try to find somewhere with the tech you need to fix your communicator. And which do you think is wiser? Zara asked, studying the human's face. Jack's lips quirked in a humorless smile. Neither option's great, to be honest. But staying put means eventually getting found. At least on the move, we've got a chance. Zara nodded slowly. Then we move. But why are you helping me? Jack Hawthorne. You owe me nothing. Jack's eyes met hers, and for a moment, Zara saw a depth of emotion she hadn't expected in the human. Let's just say I've seen enough of humanity's darker side. Maybe helping you is a way to balance the scales a bit. Before Zara could respond, a loud crack echoed through the forest. Jack was on his feet in an instant, moving to the window with a fluid grace that belied his size. Damn, he muttered. Looks like option 2 it is. They're here. Zara joined him at the window, her heart racing. Through the trees, she could see figures in dark uniforms moving with purpose. How did they find us so quickly? She whispered. Probably tracked the electromagnetic signature from your ship, Jack said grimly. We need to move. Now. What followed was a whirlwind of activity. Jack grabbed a backpack, quickly filling it with supplies. Food, water, a first aid kit, and other items Zara couldn't identify. He strapped a larger weapon, a rifle, her implant supplied, to his back and handed Zara a smaller handgun. You know how to use one of these, he asked. Zara shook her head. My people are not warriors. Jack's expression softened slightly. Let's hope you don't have to become one. But just in case, point and squeeze the trigger. And try not to hit me. They slipped out the back of the cabin just as the first shouts came from the front. Zara's legs burned as they ran through the underbrush, Jack leading the way with a surety that spoke of intimate familiarity with the terrain. As they crested a small hill, a new sound reached them, the whomp-whomp-whomp of helicopter blades. Down, Jack hissed, pulling Zara into the cover of a fallen log. They lay there, barely breathing, as the helicopter passed overhead. Zara could feel the vibrations in her exoskeleton, and for a moment she was back in her crashing ship, certain that death awaited her. But then Jack's hand was on her arm, surprisingly gentle. It's okay, he murmured. They've passed. We need to keep moving. As they resumed their flight, Zara found herself marveling at the human's resilience. Here he was, throwing away the life he built to help an alien he'd just met. It went against everything she'd been taught about humans, that they were selfish, violent creatures driven by base instincts. Yet Jack was proving to be something else entirely. Compassionate, yes, but also cunning and resourceful. As they navigated a particularly treacherous slope, he reached back to steady her, his touch firm but careful. Why did you leave your people? Zara found herself asking as they paused to catch their breath. You seem different from what I expected of humans. Jack's face darkened. I've done things I'm not proud of, he said quietly. Followed orders I shouldn't have. Out here, I thought I could escape it all. Guess the universe had other plans. Before Zara could press further, a new sound reached them, the rush of water. They emerged from the trees to find themselves at the edge of a fast-moving river. "We'll have to cross," Jack said, eyeing the current. "It'll throw off any dogs they might be using to track us." Zara stared at the churning water, her scales rippling with apprehension. I cannot swim," she admitted. Jack looked at her, surprise evident on his face. "No swimming on your planet." Zara shook her head. "We evolved in arid regions. Large bodies of water are uncommon." For a moment, Jack was silent, and Zara feared he might abandon her. But then he nodded, his jaw set with determination. "All right then," he said, shrugging off his backpack and securing it more tightly. "Guess we're doing this together. Hold on to me, and whatever you do, don't let go." Zara hesitated for only a moment before wrapping her arms around Jack's torso. His body was warm, radiating a heat that was both foreign and oddly comforting. "Ready?" he asked, his voice a low rumble she could feel through his chest. "No," Zara replied honestly. "But I trust you." With that, they plunged into the icy water. The current immediately tried to tear them apart, but Jack's strong arms kept them together. "Zara." With that, they plunged into the icy water. The current immediately tried to tear them apart, but Jack's strong arms kept them together. Zara's scales constricted against the cold, her body instinctively trying to conserve heat. For what felt like an eternity, they battled the river's fury. Zara could feel Jack's muscles straining as he fought to keep them both afloat and moving towards the opposite shore. Just when she thought they couldn't hold on any longer, her feet scraped against the river. With a final surge of effort, Jack dragged them both onto the bank. They collapsed onto the muddy ground, gasping for air. Zara's bioluminescence flickered weakly, her body trembling from the exertion and cold. "You okay?" Jack panted, pushing himself up to look at her. Zara nodded, unable to speak just yet. She watched as Jack quickly surveyed their surroundings, his soldier's instincts never truly at rest. "We should be safe for a bit," he said, helping her to her feet. "But we need to get you warmed up. Hypothermia's no joke, even for space ladies." As they made their way into the shelter of the trees, Zara found herself leaning on Jack more than she'd like to admit. Her limbs felt heavy, and a strange lethargy was creeping over her. Jack seemed to notice her deteriorating condition. Without a word, he scooped her up into his arms, carrying her as if she weighed nothing. Under normal circumstances, Zara would have protested such treatment. But right now, she was too exhausted and cold to care. After what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, Jack set her down gently in a small clearing. "Stay here," he said. "I'm going to gather some wood for a fire." Zara wanted to object, to insist that she could help, but her body refused to cooperate. She watched through half-lidded eyes as Jack moved efficiently around the clearing, gathering dry wood and kindling. In no time at all, a small fire was crackling merrily. Jack helped Zara closer to the warmth, then began rummaging through his backpack. "Here," he said, pulling out a metallic blanket. "Emergency thermal blanket. It'll help you warm up faster." As he wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, Zara caught a glimpse of his hands. They were rough and calloused, bearing the marks of a life lived hard. Yet his touch was gentle, almost tender. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice still shaky from the cold. You saved my life." Jack shrugged, settling down next to her. "You'd have done the same for me." Zara wasn't so sure about that, but she kept the thought to herself. As warmth slowly returned to her body, she found herself studying her human companion more closely. Despite his gruff exterior, there was a kindness to Jack that she hadn't expected. He had risked his life to help her, a stranger, an alien, no less. It went against everything she had been taught about humans. "Jack," she said softly, "why did you really leave your people? You said you'd done things you weren't proud of, but what does that mean?" For a long moment, Jack was silent, staring into the flames. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and heavy with emotion. I was a soldier, he began. A good one. Too good, maybe. I followed orders without question, did things I thought were necessary for the greater good. He paused, his jaw clenching. But then I saw what those actions really meant. The lives destroyed, the communities torn apart, all in the name of national security. Zara listened, fascinated and horrified in equal measure. Her people had long ago moved past such conflicts, but she knew from her studies that many younger species still engaged in warfare. I couldn't do it anymore, Jack continued. Couldn't be a part of that machine. So I left, came out here, trying to find, I don't know, peace maybe, redemption. He looked at her then, his storm-gray eyes reflecting the firelight. And then you literally fell out of the sky. Funny how the universe works sometimes, isn't it? Zara nodded slowly, processing his words. In my culture, she said, we have a concept called jackal. It means the path that leads home. But it's not just about physical location. It's about finding where you truly belong in the universe. Jack's lips quirked in a small smile. Jackal, he repeated, the alien word sounding strange, but not unpleasant on his tongue. I like that. Maybe that's what I've been looking for all this time. They lapsed into a comfortable silence, the crackling of the fire and the sounds of the forest creating the soothing backdrop. Zara found her eyes growing heavy, the events of the day catching up with her. Just as she was about to drift off, a twig snapped in the distance. Jack was on his feet, in an instant, rifle in hand. Stay here, he whispered, moving towards the sound with a predator's grace. Zara held her breath, her antennae twitching as she strained to pick up any electromagnetic signatures. For a tense moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, to her surprise, she heard Jack laugh. Well, I'll be damned, he called out. Zara, come see this, but move slowly. We don't want to scare her. Curious, Zara rose and made her way to where Jack stood. As she peered around him, she gasped softly. There, just at the edge of their clearing, stood a magnificent creature. It was tall and graceful, with long legs and a delicate face. 2 branching antlers crowned its head, and its large dark eyes regarded them with a mixture of caution and curiosity. It's a deer, Jack explained in a hushed voice. A white-tailed deer, to be specific. Beautiful, isn't she? Zara nodded, entranced. In all her studies of Earth's fauna, she had never seen anything quite like this. The deer's presence seemed to transform the forest, making it feel less like a place of danger and more like a realm of wonder. As they watched, the deer took a tentative step closer, its nostrils flaring as it caught their scent. Then, with a flick of its tail, it bounded away, disappearing into the underbrush as silently as it had appeared. Wow, Zara breathed, her scales shimmering with excitement. That was incredible. Jack nodded, a genuine smile softening his features. Yeah, it really was. You know, sometimes I forget how amazing this planet can be. Guess it took an alien's perspective to remind me. As they made their way back to the fire, Zara found herself feeling more optimistic than she had since her crash. Yes, they were still being hunted. Yes, she was still stranded on an alien world. But in this moment, watching the interplay of firelight and shadow on Jack's face, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Get some rest, Jack said as they settled back down. We've got a long journey ahead of us tomorrow. Zara nodded, curling up in her thermal blanket. As she drifted off to sleep, her last thought was that maybe, just maybe, she had found an unexpected ally in this strange, beautiful, dangerous world. The next morning dawned clear and crisp. Zara awoke to find Jack already up, tending to the remnants of their fire and preparing what looked like a meal from his pack. Morning, Space Lady, he greeted her. How are you feeling? Zara stretched, assessing her body. To her surprise, she felt remarkably good. I am. Well, she said. Your planet's atmosphere seems to agree with me. Jack nodded, handing her a packet of what her implant identified as trail mix. Good to hear. We got a lot of ground to cover today. I think I know a place where we might be able to get the parts you need for your communicator, but it's not going to be an easy trip. As they ate and packed up their small camp, Jack outlined his plan. There was a small town about 2 days' hike from their current position. It had an electronics store that might have components compatible with Zora's technology. Of course, Jack added grimly, that's assuming the authorities haven't already locked the place down. We'll need to be careful. Zora nodded, understanding the risk. As they set out, she found herself marveling at how quickly she was adapting to this alien environment. The forest, which had seemed so hostile yesterday, now felt almost welcoming. As they hiked, Jack began pointing out various plants and animals, explaining their roles in the ecosystem. Zara listened, fascinated by the complexity and interconnectedness of Earth's biosphere. You know, she said during a brief rest, my people would be amazed by all this. We've traveled to countless worlds, but I've never seen one with such diverse life. Jack raised an eyebrow. Really? I thought spacefaring civilizations would have seen it all. Zara shook her head. Many planets we've encountered either never developed complex life or suffered extinction events that wiped out most species. Earth is special. A shadow passed over Jack's face. Yeah, well, we're doing our best to ruin it. Climate change, deforestation, pollution. Sometimes I think we don't deserve this planet. Zara was quiet for a moment, considering his words. Perhaps, she finally said, but I've also seen evidence of humans trying to protect your world. The fact that places like this forest still exist is testament to that. Jack looked at her, surprise evident in his expression. Huh. I never thought I'd get an environmental pep talk from an alien. Before Zara could respond, a low rumble filled the air. At first, she thought it was thunder, but Jack's sudden tension told her otherwise. Vehicles, he hissed, pulling her behind a large tree. Military, from the sound of it. They must be expanding their search area. Sure enough, Zara could now make out the distinctive sound of engines. They were still distant, but getting closer. We need to move, Jack said, his voice tight with urgency. There's a series of caves not far from here. If we can reach them, we might be able to throw off any heat sensors they're using. As they set off at a brisk pace, Zara couldn't help but marvel at the strange turn her life had taken. Here she was, a highly trained scout of the Galactic Union, running through an alien forest with a human fugitive. But as she glanced at Jack, seeing the determination in his eyes and the protective way he guided her through the terrain, she realized something important. Despite their differences, despite the danger they were in, she trusted this human. And in that trust, she found a strength she didn't know she possessed. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Zara knew that together, they stood a chance of overcoming them. The sound of vehicles grew louder as they raced towards the caves, the fate of both alien and human hanging in the balance. The journey. Across hostile territory. The caves loomed before them, dark mouths yawning in the face of a steep cliff. Jack and Zara scrambled up the rocky slope, the sound of approaching vehicles spurring them on. Just as they reached the nearest cave entrance, a beam of light cut through the forest behind them. Inside, quick, Jack hissed, ushering Zara into the darkness. They pressed themselves against the cool stone wall, barely daring to breathe as the rumble of engines grew closer. Zara's bioluminescence began to flicker involuntarily with stress, casting a faint, eerie glow in the cave. Zara, Jack whispered urgently, can you control that light? She nodded, concentrating hard. Slowly, the glow faded until they were plunged into complete darkness. Outside, voices could be heard, sharp and authoritative. Fan out. They can't have gone far. Check those caves. Jack's hand found Zara's in the darkness, giving it a reassuring squeeze. We need to go deeper, he murmured, his breath warm against her antennae. There's a network of tunnels. If we can lose them in there, we might have a chance. Slowly, carefully, they began to make their way deeper into the cave system. Zara's eyes, evolved for the dim light of her homeworld's binary star system, adjusted quickly to the darkness. She found herself guiding Jack, warning him of low-hanging stalactites and treacherous drops. As they ventured further in, the sounds of their pursuers faded, replaced by the drip of water and the occasional scrabble of unseen cave-dwelling creatures. The air grew cooler, heavy with the scent of damp stone and earth. "Jack," Zara whispered after what felt like hours of careful navigation, "I'm picking up some strange readings. There's a large open space ahead, but something's not right." Jack paused, listening intently. "I don't hear anything." "What kind of readings?" Zara's antennae twitched, trying to make sense of the information. It's like nothing I've encountered before. A mix of organic and inorganic signatures. Very faint, but definitely there." They emerged into a vast cavern, so large that even Zora's enhanced vision couldn't make out the far walls. But what caught their attention was the center of the space. There, bathed in a soft, pulsing light, was what looked like a forest of crystalline structures. "What in the world?" Jack breathed, his voice a mix of awe and apprehension. As they approached cautiously, Zara realized that the structures were not purely mineral. Veins of what looked like organic material ran through the crystals, pulsing with that strange, otherworldly light. "This isn't natural," she said, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "These formations, they're some kind of hybrid life form. I've never seen anything like it." Jack's hand tightened on his rifle. "Are they dangerous?" Before Zara could answer, a low hum filled the air. The light pulsing through the crystal structures intensified, and Zara felt a strange pressure in her mind. They're trying to communicate," she gasped, her antennae vibrating with the effort of interpreting the alien signals. Jack looked at her, concern evident even in the dim light. "What are they saying?" Zara closed her eyes, concentrating. "It's not words, exactly. More like impressions, emotions. They're curious about us. They've been here for a very long time. Waiting. Waiting for what?" Jack asked, his voice tight. Zara's eyes snapped open. "For someone to find them. Jack, I think they're not from Earth. This might be some kind of ancient alien outpost." The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. If she was right, this discovery could change everything, not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. Jack ran a hand through his hair, his expression a mix of disbelief and wonder. "So, what? We've stumbled onto some kind of first contact scenario in the middle of running from the military." Zara nodded slowly. "It appears so. And I think they want our help." As if in response to her words, one of the larger crystal structures began to shift. A section of it separated, forming what looked like a doorway. Beyond it, they could see a soft blue glow. "They're inviting us in," Zara said, taking a step forward. Jack caught her arm. "Wait. Are you sure this is safe? We don't know anything about these beings." Zara turned to look at him, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the pulsing light. "No, we don't. But Jack, think about it. This could be the key to everything. A way to prove to your people that the universe is so much bigger, so much more wondrous than they imagine. It could change the course of your entire civilization." For a long moment, Jack was silent, his storm-gray eyes searching Zora's alien features. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right. But we go together, and at the first sign of trouble, we're out of here. Deal?" Zara nodded, feeling a surge of affection for this brave, cautious human. "Deal." Hand in hand, alien and human stepped through the crystal doorway. The blue glow enveloped them, and Zara felt a tingling sensation across her scales. For a moment, everything seemed to blur. When their vision cleared, they found themselves in what looked like a control room of sorts. Crystalline panels lined the walls, each pulsing with that strange, living light. In the center of the room stood a pillar of swirling energy. As they watched, the energy coalesced into a vaguely humanoid. As they watched, the energy coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape. It had no distinct features, but Zara could sense an intelligence behind its luminous form. "Greetings, travelers," a voice echoed in their minds. It was neither male nor female, young nor old, but carried an undeniable sense of ancient wisdom. "We have waited eons for one such as you to arrive." Jack's grip on Zara's hand heightened, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "Who? What are you?" The being's form shimmered as if considering the question. "We are the Guardians. Long ago, we were tasked with watching over the younger races of this galaxy. We have observed your kind, humans, since your first ancestors looked up at the stars with wonder." Zara stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "And my people, the Zorians. Have you watched us as well?" The Guardian's form pulsed with what Zara interpreted as affirmation. "Indeed, your people's journey to the stars was a moment of great joy for us. But now, a greater task lies ahead." "What task?" Jack asked, his soldiers' instincts on high alert. "And why us?" The Guardian's form expanded, filling the room with swirling patterns of light. Images began to form in the air around them. Stars, planets, vast cosmic events. "A great darkness approaches." The Guardian's voice resonated in their minds. "A force that threatens not just your worlds, but all life in the galaxy. We have long prepared for this moment, seeding worlds with the knowledge and technology needed to face this threat. But we cannot act directly. The choice must be made freely by the younger races." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of threat? And how can we possibly hope to stop it?" The Guardian's form contracted, focusing on them once more. "The nature of the threat is beyond your current understanding. But know this, united, the races of this galaxy have the potential to overcome it. Divided, all will fall." Jack shook his head, a wry smile on his face. No pressure or anything. "So, what? You want us to go back and tell our people about some cosmic big bad that's coming to get us? Do you have any idea how that's going to sound?" "We understand your skepticism, Jack Hawthorne," the Guardian replied, and Zara felt Jack stiffen beside her at the use of his full name. "But we offer more than just warnings. We offer knowledge, technology, the means to unite your worlds and prepare for what is to come." As if on cue, a section of the crystalline wall slid open, revealing a small glowing orb. It floated towards them, hovering between Zara and Jack. "This contains the seeds of understanding," the Guardian explained. "Technological blueprints, cultural insights, historical records, everything your peoples will need to begin the process of unification and preparation." Zara reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing the orb's surface. Immediately, her mind was flooded with images, equations, concepts so advanced they made her head spin. She snatched her hand back, gasping. It's incredible," she breathed. "Jack, with this, we could advance both our civilizations by centuries, maybe even millennia." Jack looked at the orb warily. "And what's the catch?" "There's always a catch." The Guardian's form pulsed with what Zara thought might be approval. "Wise to be cautious, human. The catch, as you put it, is this. By accepting this knowledge, you also accept the responsibility that comes with it. You will become our emissaries, tasked with bringing your peoples together and preparing them for what is to come. It will not be an easy path." Zara and Jack exchanged glances. In that moment, Zara saw all the doubt, fear, and hope she felt reflected in Jack's storm-gray eyes. We need to discuss this," Zara said, turning back to the Guardian. "Can you give us a moment?" The Guardian's form dimmed slightly. "Of course. But be aware, your pursuers draw near. Time is not a luxury you have in abundance." As the Guardian's presence faded, Jack pulled Zara aside. "Zara, this is insane. We can't possibly make this kind of decision. We're talking about the fate of entire civilizations here. Zara nodded, her antennae twitching with agitation. I know. But Jack, think about it. This could be the answer to everything. A way to bring your people into the galactic community peacefully. A chance to prepare for a threat we might otherwise be blind to until it's too late. Jack ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. And what if it's a trap? What if this guardian is manipulating us for its own ends? It's possible, Zara admitted, but my instincts tell me it's genuine. And even if it's not, Jack, the potential benefits outweigh the risks. This knowledge could save countless lives. For a long moment, Jack was silent, his eyes focused on something far away. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but resolute. You know, when I left the military, I thought I was done making world-changing decisions. Funny how life works out. He turned to her, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. All right, Space Lady. I'm in. But we do this together, all the way. No matter what happens, we face it as a team. Deal. Zara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite name but knew was important. Deal, she said, reaching out to clasp Jack's hand. As their fingers intertwined, human and alien, the Guardian's presence filled the room once more. You have chosen, it said, its mental voice tinged with what might have been relief. Take the orb. It will guide you to where you need to go next. Jack reached out, hesitated for just a moment, then grasped the glowing sphere. As soon as his fingers touched its surface, the orb pulsed with blinding light. When Zora's vision cleared, she gasped. They were no longer in the crystal cave. Instead, they stood on a hilltop overlooking a sprawling city. In the distance, sleek buildings stretched towards the sky, while vehicles that looked far more advanced than anything she'd seen on Earth zipped through the air. Where are we? Jack asked, his voice filled with wonder. Zara's antennae twitched, taking in the familiar scents and electromagnetic signatures. We're on Zoria, my homeworld. As they stood there, taking in the incredible vista before them, Zara felt a mix of emotions wash over her. Joy at seeing her home, fear at the enormous task that lay ahead of them, and an unexpected feeling of excitement at facing this challenge with Jack by her side. The orb pulsed in Jack's hand, and Zara knew that their real journey was only just beginning. Together, human and Zorian, they would have to find a way to unite their peoples and prepare them for the coming darkness. As the twin suns of Zoria began to set, casting the city in a warm, golden glow, Zara turned to Jack. Ready for the next step? Jack grinned, a mix of nervousness and determination in his eyes. As ready as I'll ever be. Lead the way, Space Lady. Hand in hand, they began to make their way down the hill towards the city, the fate of two worlds, and perhaps the entire galaxy, resting in their hands. Revelation, the true nature of humanity. The capital city of Zoria stretched before them, a dazzling array of crystalline spires and elegant arches that seemed to defy gravity. Jack's eyes were wide with wonder as they made their way through the bustling streets, his head swiveling to take in every alien sight and sound. This is incredible, he breathed, watching as a group of Zorians glided by on what looked like hovering discs. I feel like I'm in a sci-fi movie. Zara couldn't help but smile at his amazement. Seeing her home through Jack's eyes made her appreciate anew the beauty and advanced nature of her civilization. But it also highlighted the vast gulf between their two species, a gulf they would somehow have to bridge. As they approached the central governance spire, Zara felt a growing sense of unease. How would she explain Jack's presence? More importantly, how would they convince the Zorian leadership of the Guardian's warning and the need for unity with Earth? Zara, a voice called out. They turned to see a tall, elegantly dressed Zorian hurrying towards them. By the twin suns, we thought you were lost. Krell, Zara greeted her superior, trying to keep her voice steady. I can explain. Krull's multifaceted eyes darted between Zara and Jack, widening in shock as they took in the human's alien features. I should hope so, he said, his voice tight with barely contained alarm. You've been missing for weeks, and now you return with a human. Jack supplied, stepping forward with a disarming smile. Jack Hawthorne, pleased to meet you. Krull's antennae twitched in agitation. This is unprecedented. Zara, you know the protocols for first contact situations. Bringing an unvetted alien species to our homeworld. It's necessary, Zara interrupted firmly. Krull, we need to speak with the High Council immediately. The fate of both our worlds depends on it. Something in Zara's tone must have conveyed the gravity of the situation, because Krull's objections died on his lips. He nodded sharply. Follow me, but be prepared for some serious questioning. As they were led through the winding corridors of the governance spire, Jack leaned in close to Zara. So, what's the plan? We just tell them about the Guardians and hope they believe us. Zara's antennae drooped slightly. I'm not sure. The High Council is known for its caution. Convincing them of the need for immediate action won't be easy. Before Jack could respond, they were ushered into a vast, circular chamber. 7 Zorians sat in a semicircle on elevated platforms, their iridescent robes shimmering in the soft light. The air hummed with a tension that even Jack could feel. Scout Commander Zara, the central figure spoke, her voice resonating with authority. You have much to explain. For the next hour, Zara recounted their incredible journey, her crash on Earth, meeting Jack, their encounter with the Guardians, and the warning of the coming darkness. As she spoke, she could see the counselor's expressions shifting from skepticism to concern to outright disbelief. When she finished, there was a long moment of silence. Then, the lead counselor spoke again. This is a fantastic tale, Scout Commander, one that strains credulity to its limits. Do you have any proof of these claims? Jack stepped forward, holding out the glowing orb. We have this, he said. It contains knowledge beyond anything either of our civilizations has achieved. One of the counselors scoffed. And we're to take the word of a primitive alien on this matter. Jack's eyes flashed with anger, but before he could retort, Zara placed a calming hand on his arm. Counselors, I understand your skepticism, but I implore you to examine the orb. Its contents will speak for themselves. After a tense debate, the council agreed to have their top scientists examine the orb. As they waited for the results, Zara could feel the weight of Jack's gaze on her. Your people don't think much of humans, do they? He asked quietly. Zara sighed. It's not that simple. We've observed Earth for centuries. Your wars, your environmental destruction. Many Zorians see humans as a potentially dangerous species. Jack's jaw tightened. We've made mistakes, sure, but we're trying to be better, to learn from our past. Before Zara could respond, the chamber doors burst open. A flustered scientist rushed in, his scales flickering with excitement. High Counselors, he gasped. The orb, it's genuine. The knowledge contained within, it's beyond anything we've ever seen. Technological advancements, historical records of civilizations we've never encountered. It's all there. A murmur ran through the chamber. The lead counselor leaned forward, her eyes intense. And the warning. Is there any indication of this coming darkness? The scientist nodded gravely. Yes, counselor. The data suggests a threat unlike anything our galaxy has faced, but it also provides blueprints for technologies that could help us prepare. Technologies that would require the combined efforts of multiple civilizations to develop. The council chamber erupted into heated debate. Voices argued back and forth about the validity of the threat, the risks of trusting the orb's information, and the implications of allying with a primitive species like humanity. As the argument raged, Jack turned to Zara, his expression determined. Let me speak to them, he said. Zara hesitated. Jack, I'm not sure that's a good idea. They're already on edge about your presence here. Trust me, Jack said, squeezing her hand gently. Sometimes you need a human perspective to shake things up. Before Zara could object further, Jack stepped forward, his voice cutting through the clamor. "Counselors of Zoria," he began, his tone respectful but firm. "I understand your concerns. To you, humans must seem like children playing with fire. And you're not entirely wrong." The chamber fell silent, all eyes fixed on the strange alien in their midst. "We've made mistakes," Jack continued. "Terrible ones. We've waged wars, polluted our planet, hurt each other in countless ways. But that's not the whole story of humanity." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "We've also created art that can move the soul, music that can express the inexpressible. We've looked up at the stars with wonder and dreamed of reaching them. And when faced with adversity, we've shown a capacity for courage, compassion, and self-sacrifice that I believe would surprise you." Jack's voice grew stronger, filled with passion. "Yes, we're young. Yes, we're still learning. But we're also adaptable, innovative, and when united by a common cause, capable of achieving the impossible. The Guardians chose both our species for a reason. Together, we have the potential to face this threat and emerge stronger." He turned to Zara, his eyes softening. "In the short time I've known Zara, I've seen the best of what both our species can be. Her courage, her compassion, her willingness to trust a stranger from a world she'd been taught to fear. These are qualities that give me hope for the future, a future where Zorians and humans work side by side, learning from each other, growing together." Jack faced the council once more. "The choice before us is simple. We can let our fears and prejudices divide us, leaving us vulnerable to this coming darkness. Or we can take a leap of faith. We can choose to trust, to unite, to pool our knowledge and resources in preparation for whatever lies ahead." He spread his hands, his expression open and earnest. "I stand before you not just as a human, but as a representative of all those on Earth who dream of a better future, a future among the stars, in harmony with other intelligent life. Will you help us make that dream a reality?" As Jack finished speaking, the chamber was filled with a stunned silence. Zara looked at her human companion with a new sense of awe. In that moment, she saw the true potential of humanity, their ability to inspire, to rally others to a cause greater than themselves. The lead counselor stood, her expression unreadable. "You have given us much to consider, Jack Hawthorne of Earth. We will deliberate on your words and the evidence before us. Until then, you and Scout Commander Zara will remain here as our guests." As they were led from the chamber, Zara felt a mix of hope and trepidation. Jack's speech had been powerful, but would it be enough to overcome centuries of caution and prejudice? Only time would tell. But as she looked at Jack, seeing the determination in his eyes, Zara realized that for the first time since this incredible journey began, she truly believed they had a chance of succeeding. The fate of two worlds, and perhaps the entire galaxy, now hung in the balance, waiting for the Zorian High Council's decision. The choice. A new understanding. Days passed in a blur of tense waiting and hurried preparations. The Zorian High Council had sequestered themselves, poring over the data from the Guardian's orb, and debating the ramifications of Jack's impassioned speech. Meanwhile, Zara and Jack were kept in a comfortable but closely monitored suite within the governance spire. You'd think they'd have made a decision by now," Jack muttered, pacing the length of their suite for what felt like the 100th time. "How long can they possibly debate this?" Zara looked up from the datapad she'd been studying, her multifaceted eyes tracking Jack's restless movement. "The High Council is known for its thoroughness," she said, trying to keep her voice calm despite her own growing anxiety. "They're not just deciding the fate of Zoria, but potentially that of Earth and the entire galaxy. It's not a choice to be made lightly." Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know. It's just, the waiting is killing me. And the longer we're here, the more I worry about what's happening back on Earth. My disappearance won't have gone unnoticed. Zara set aside her datapad and moved to join Jack by the large window overlooking the shimmering cityscape of the Zorian capital. She placed a comforting hand on his arm, marveling once again at the warmth of his skin. "Jack," she said softly, "no matter what happens, I want you to know that I'm grateful. For everything you've done, for the risks you've taken. You've shown me a side of humanity I never expected to see." Jack turned to her, a small smile softening his features. "And you've shown me that the universe is far more wonderful and complex than I ever imagined. Whatever happens next, I wouldn't trade this experience for anything." Their moment of understanding was interrupted by a soft chime. The door to their suite slid open, revealing Krell, Zora's superior. "The High Council has reached a decision," he announced, his antennae twitching with barely contained excitement. "They request your presence immediately." As they followed Krell through the winding corridors of the governance spire, Zora could feel the tension radiating from Jack. She reached out and took his hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. He looked at her in surprise, then smiled, returning the gesture. The council chamber was packed when they entered. Not only were the 7 high councilors present, but also a host of other Zorian officials, scientists, and what appeared to be military leaders. The air hummed with anticipation. The lead counselor, her iridescent robes shimmering in the soft light, stood as they approached. "Scout Commander Zora, Jack Hawthorne of Earth," she began, her voice carrying easily through the large space. "We have deliberated long and hard on the information you have brought us and the words you have spoken." She paused, her multifaceted eyes sweeping the chamber before focusing back on Zora and Jack. "The decision we have reached will shape the future of not just Zoria, but Earth and potentially countless other worlds." Jack's hand tightened around Zora's as they waited for the counselor to continue. "After much debate and careful analysis of the Guardian's orb, we have decided to accept the call for unity and preparation." A collective gasp went through the chamber, followed by a buzz of excited conversation. Zara felt a wave of relief wash over her, so strong she feared her legs might give out. The lead counselor raised a hand for silence. This decision was not made lightly. The threat described in the orb is beyond anything we have ever faced. But so too is the potential for growth and advancement through cooperation with other species, including humanity. She turned her gaze directly to Jack. "Your words, Jack Hawthorne, played no small part in our decision. You have shown us that despite its youth and mistakes, humanity possesses a spirit of determination and hope that may well be crucial in the challenges to come." Jack nodded solemnly, clearly moved by the counselor's words. However, the counselor continued, "This is only the beginning. We face enormous challenges in the days ahead, not least of which is how to approach your people, Jack, given their current level of technological development and lack of unified global governance." "I may have an idea about that," Jack said, stepping forward. "But first, I have a question. The orb the Guardians gave us, did it provide any information about faster-than-light travel?" One of the other counselors, a wizened Zorian with pale blue scales, leaned forward. "Indeed it did. Blueprints for a drive system far beyond our current capabilities. Why do you ask?" Jack grinned, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "Because I think I know how we can introduce Earth to the galactic community in a way they can't ignore, and potentially unite them in the process." Over the next hour, Jack laid out his plan. It was audacious, potentially dangerous, but also brilliant in its simplicity. They would use the advanced drive system to move a Zorian ship into Earth's solar system, making their presence known in an undeniable but non-threatening way. Then, using Earth's own communication networks, they would broadcast a message to the entire planet, explaining the situation and inviting Earth's leaders to a neutral meeting ground, the Moon. "It's risky," Zora admitted when Jack finished outlining his plan. "If Earth reacts with fear or hostility." "They might," Jack agreed. "But I think the sheer magnitude of the event, Irrefutable proof of intelligent alien life will shock most of the world into listening, at least initially. And once we explain the threat we're all facing, well, nothing unites people like a common enemy. The High Council debated Jack's proposal, asking probing questions and raising potential issues. But in the end, they agreed it was the best chance they had of bringing Earth into the fold quickly. Very well, the lead counselor said. We will begin preparations immediately. Jack Hawthorne, we would ask that you work with our communications experts to craft the message to your people. Your insight will be crucial in finding the right words to reach them. Jack nodded, a mix of excitement and trepidation on his face. I'd be honored. As the chamber began to clear, people rushing off to begin the monumental task ahead, Zara turned to Jack. How are you feeling? She asked softly. Jack let out a long breath. Terrified. Excited. A little bit like I'm dreaming. He looked at her, his storm-gray eyes intense. But mostly, I'm grateful you're here with me. I couldn't do this alone. Zara felt a warmth spread through her chest. Nor could I, she admitted. I think perhaps the Guardians knew what they were doing when they brought us together. Jack smiled, reaching out to take her hand once more. Maybe they did at that. Partners. Zara nodded, her scales shimmering with emotion. Partners. As they left the council chamber hand in hand, Zara couldn't help but marvel at the journey that had brought them to this point. From a crashed ship in the forests of Earth to the brink of a new era for both their species, it had been a path neither of them could have imagined. The days ahead would be filled with challenges, dangers, and undoubtedly moments of fear and doubt. But as Zara looked at Jack, seeing the determination and hope in his eyes, she knew that together they could face whatever the universe threw at them. The first step towards unity had been taken. Now it was time to bring Earth into the galactic community and prepare for the darkness to come. As the twin suns of Zoria set, casting the city in a warm glow, Zara and Jack stood side by side, ready to face the future, not as alien and human, but as partners, friends, and perhaps something more. The journey that had begun with a crash landing was far from over. In fact, in many ways, it was just beginning. But with the combined strength of humanity's spirit and Zorian wisdom, there was hope. Hope for understanding, for growth, and for a future where the stars themselves were within reach. As night fell on Zoria, the first preparations for their audacious plan were already underway. The fate of 2 worlds, and the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. But for the first time since this incredible adventure began, both Zara and Jack felt truly ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would bridge the gap between their worlds and forge a path towards a united future. The darkness might be coming, but they would face it with the light of hope, understanding, and unity. And so, as the story of the unexpected alien and her human ally came to a close, a new chapter was just beginning. Not just for Zara and Jack, but for all of humanity and the Zorian people. The stars awaited, and with them, a future filled with both peril and promise. The end, and a new beginning.